What's up, Facebook, YouTube? We are live here at the VaynerMedia studios in Long Island City, Queens, New York, with Jason Beauregard, the head of the studio for Vayner. You guys probably or may or may not know of Gary V, Gary Vaynerchuk. He's like arguably the most well-known person on social media.
I was going to say, I don't think there's anybody watching who could say that they don't know who Gary V is at this point.
If they don't know, they probably don't know his name, but they know his face. Either they know his face or his name.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, there's much more. A lot of people don't know that he runs a very innovative and successful advertising agency that Jason is part of, and it runs the video, the production side of it. So we're really happy to have you welcome us into your space.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. I'm glad we were able to do it here today. It's kind of cool to actually use. I've never actually used the studio before. We do a live broadcast from here every single day, so it's kind of cool that you guys came out here and had us on.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Maybe for a lot of people, maybe you can give just kind of an overview of what VaynerMedia does, the size, the studio you just opened. This is pretty new, and your clients, so they understand kind of the scope of what you're up to.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with Vayner for about almost 4 years now. And when I came here, there was about 400 or 500 employees working on the VaynerMedia side of it. And Gary brought me in because he wanted to start a production arm within the media agency itself. At the time, it was mostly doing a lot of social, community management work, a lot of like being the voice of brands specifically. Yeah. And he saw a white space to kind of get involved and really push the envelope with video production. So he brought me in. There was a small team that was already established before I got here, probably like 5 or 6 people who were doing a lot of photo work, some small video work, and kind of brought me in to kind of build the team out. And so I started with those 5 or 6 originally, and then grew that team to about 40 or 50 people. At the time, we were kind of ingrained into the agency itself. And last year, almost 1 year to the day, we opened up this facility in Long Island City, the first occupants in this building. And it's got 3,000 square foot, huge, spaces to do photo shoots in, video shoots in. We've got a massive shoot going on right now in one of the spaces. So we do huge set builds. It's a huge, huge change from where we were, when I first started. We're doing our shoots in a closet, probably half the size of the studio we're currently in. And so it's been an incredible ride. Gary is obviously, he's an innovator, and he has a huge long-term game plan. He doesn't think about stuff that happens tomorrow. He thinks about stuff that's happening in 20 years from now. And he saw an opportunity to kind of build this out, and I was very, very fortunate to kind of like get in at the ground level with him and help kind of realize this, bring this vision of his to life. And it's met with a lot of speed bumps and things that happen along the way. But I think, when you kind of look at where we're at and you kind of look at the space, you look at the work that we've been doing over the past 3 or 4 years, it's game changing. And, a lot of our clients, from Budweiser, probably being one of our biggest clients, we've really kind of like changed the way they kind of produce video and distribute video on social and digital platforms. And it's thanks to his vision of what he had, 4 years ago when he brought me in. And I think it's also a testament to the team that we have here working here today, both with the agency and with the production team. And I think one of the things that's been amazing working here at Vayner is that Gary has built this thing to be a one-stop shop. So he's got an agency that manages the clients in the day-to-day, that kind of produces the creative, that comes up with these really great, amazing, ideas, whether they be video, voice, still images. And then he has us to kind of help execute the vision from a production standpoint. And on top of that, he's layered a paid media team, to kind of like culminate and help distribute the content. So when you've got all of these, pieces that are kind of working collaboratively together, you're all in it to win at the same time. And I think from the traditional agency model, where you have the agency who finds the production company who then hires the paid media team to kind of like distribute everything, there's a lot of like, hiccups that can go wrong along the way, a lot of handoffs, a lot of things that don't really kind of have a cohesive vision. And I think the thing that's amazing here is there's one cohesive vision that's always working for the betterment of the brand, and then also for the betterment of like what we can do socially and digitally to push that brand into new opportunities on platforms.
Yeah. So you basically you kind of started as this, what they call kind of social agency.
Yeah.
That manages kind of the social accounts from the credibility of Gary, essentially.
Sure.
And then you started building out longer or more content, starting with photos, and now you do everything from TV ads to TV shows to social video to branded content.
Yeah, I mean, we do anything from a $10,000 Snapchat ad to a $2 million Super Bowl commercial. I mean, we've done it all. And I think that's also something that's really incredible because I come from television and film. Like I started my career as an editor, like 15 years ago on Miami Inc. and kind of worked my way into Miami Inc.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I kind of worked my way into doing bigger things. Like I went to school for film, so I always wanted to be, working at the highest level, whether it be director, producer, showrunner. So I started as an editor, and I kind of grew into the world of television through editing. And took on roles as director. I became showrunner. I worked in development a lot, and television and film and those types of mediums 5 years ago was in a different space than what it is today. A lot of change, a lot of people uncertain as to like what this new digital platform was all about and how Facebook was changing the game and Netflix and all these things. So I kind of got out of that world just because I thought there was. I had a lack of understanding of the world, and I also thought that there was other opportunities for me in this new space. And so when I came in here, I come from production models where a production team is built to make one thing. If you're a production team that does reality TV, that's what you do. If you're a production team that does scripted work, that's what you do. Not too many people fall out of their swim lanes. So when I came here, the amazing thing with the way we've built this production team is that we do any and everything. We do like small things that we shoot on an iPhone, and we have two, Alexa mini cameras that we own. We have two Red cameras. We've shot stuff on the Phantom camera.
By the way, Alexa, like this, like our Facebook page right now.
Not that type of Alexa, but yeah. So we do everything, and I think that's the thing that's really incredible is like we have been able to do a half-hour TV show for MTV and do a 5-second, snap ad, and everything in between.
Yeah. So everyone who's just signing in right now or tuning in, I'm here with Jason Beauregard from Vayner Studios. I'm Alex Regier, co-founder of Story Hunter. Vayner's a new client of Story Hunter, and we're really excited to have you here and see how we're going to work together. Send in your questions. Maybe we can take a question that we just got from. Yeah, so from Shin in Singapore on Twitter asked, what work do you see yourself doing with Story Hunter in the future, and do you hire crews globally?
Yeah, I think the reason why we've gotten involved with Story Hunter recently is because we are starting to do a lot more international work, and we have set a bar for the type of quality of work that we want to do, and we've seen other platforms that offer similar services to Story Hunter, but I've not seen it at the level of the quality of work that you guys have talent-wise in your databases. So
thank you.
You're welcome. No, it's true. Like I mean. You would be shocked how many times a day I get pitched from companies wanting to work with Vayner because they know Gary. I mean, everybody comes in from Gary.
Everyone knows
right?
Gary.
Everybody.
Everyone's commented on Gary.
Everybody has commented, and everybody wants to work with him. And when they hear production studios and they're head of studio, like my LinkedIn following, which is probably the biggest social platform that I kind of like live on, went from probably like 100 followers to like I probably have like 5,000 followers now in my time of being here at Vayner, and it's because everybody hits me up because they want to work in some capacity with Gary. So I've seen probably like 10, 20 other services like Story Hunters, and every single one, it's been a pass. But when I got introduced to you guys and saw what you guys were doing, and I saw the level and quality of talent that you guys had access to, it really was super impressive, and that's why we kind of came on board, because we are getting a lot of international work. We're doing a shoot right now in Portugal. We have a shoot that's happening in Lisbon real soon. We have another one that's happening in Vietnam. We have one that's happening in Egypt. So, while we like to travel our director to a lot of these locations, like we want to make sure that we get a good staff of people on the ground that understand like what that region of the world is like.
Yeah.
And no matter how much legwork and how much pre-production work you do here in the States, it's nothing like having those on the ground resources, whether it be a DP, whether it be a PA, a fixer, producer. And the fact that you guys have such an incredible talent base of people that are accessible like that is I think it's incredibly impressive. So as we continue to grow, like we had a problem. We had like, hey, listen, like we don't have budgets that are in the millions of dollars of range to like send a crew of 20 people all over the world to capture this stuff. We can send a director and a producer, but we need some on-the-ground talent that can actually help execute these things. And that's why, like, we really think that Story Hunter is going to like help us maintain that level of excellence that we just expect from the people that we work with locally. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. Like, basically, what do you think? Like, what do you think the future? I asked. Basically, we're talking with the people that like. I really feel are like the real innovators in this space. So it's like, you know, the world's changing, distribution's changing.
Yeah.
What do you think, how do you think it's like, how do you think storytelling and video storytelling, how do you think it has to go and it will go, and what kind of differentiates you guys from the pack?
It's a really great question because a lot of brands ask the same thing. A lot of brands come to us and say, you know, like, how do we, you know, there's 5 different platforms out there.
They send you a survey, though. You gotta
yeah.
type in the survey.
That's also part of the challenge is like they have a lot of people that have opinions on certain things that don't really understand the landscape or where things are going. And those opinions sometimes are contradictory to like what you think is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years.
And they're scared.
Yeah, they're scared and they're also confused and they're also being sold. You know, I mean, Facebook has a sales team that wants to get you to advertise on their platform and need those dollars from those companies. And we're platform agnostic here. Like, we don't believe one platform is better than the other. We think that there's ways to communicate to an audience using the platforms, but understanding which one's right for your brand or which one's right to tell your story on sometimes can get very complicated. And unfortunately, we also deal with brands that have their own internal marketing teams that are like, well, Facebook is saying this, or Instagram's saying that, or Snapchat. I mean, think about a year and a half ago. How many people were like saying that Snapchat's the next big thing, and look where it is today. Like, it's changed drastically, and people are confused about where that platform's going and what's happening. And since they become public, like, their stock has gone up and down, and now it's really low again. So, you know, every single day you have all of these fluctuations and changes in the platform. But the one thing that stays consistent, and this is the thing that we've been talking a lot to a handful of brands about. The brand stays consistent, you know, and that's where you have to really focus your attention on. I think, like, as we kind of like transition into these models of more opportunities for distribution, you have to like not be so concerned about the platform and not be so concerned about where your content is living, but you got to be concerned about your content. You got to be concerned about the brand. You got to be concerned about making sure that everything points back to you, and it can live anywhere. And you're seeing pockets of stuff like that happening. Tom Brady and Michael Strahan just started The Religion of Sports about a year ago. Tom versus Time was on Facebook. They've got a Kobe show that's on Showtime. They've got you know, a couple other things that are happening on Netflix right now. So they're not they're not like saying everything's got to live on Facebook, everything's got to live on Netflix. They're able to be flexible, but yet they have a brand identity that everything kind of points back at them. They have their own website. Some of the content that they've distributed on Facebook is live there. If you're a subscriber, you get an email from them every single day saying, hey, by the way, tonight on Showtime, our Kobe show is going to be on. So I think that's where brands need to start to like be a little bit more creative. And who knows what's going to happen the next year from now. Like, Facebook just had all these restrictions put on them in European, you know, and now is that stuff going to come here? Are we going to like also have those restrictions as well? So I think if you start to like live and die and hang everything on like what platform is the best product to put your storytelling on, you're going to have problems. I think you've got to find a way to have your brand be the thing that always kind of points back to the storytelling that you want to tell, no matter what platform you're putting it on.
Yeah, it seems like everyone is talking long form for digital.
Sure.
And it's sort of like all of them are doing this, like Snapchat's going long, pushing a long term.
Instagram television just launched.
Instagram TV, everything. Yeah. So it's almost like you're going back to shows almost.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how television started, right? If you look, you know, back in the 40s, you know, when TV was in its, you know, in its infancy, you had a lot of these brands that were sponsoring these shows, you know. I mean, you had brands that were sponsoring like the Mary Tyler Moore show and all this other stuff. And so like, are we going back to that model where it's like you're going to have a TV show or you're going to have an episodic, show that's been created by Budweiser or by another brand. Like, does Budweiser make the next Cheers? And now it's on Instagram television, and you only get it there. And so there's
Budweiser make the next Cheers.
Cheers,
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, yeah.
Like Diane and,
yeah,
and Sam.
Yeah. And it's funny because there's always, when you look back nostalgically, people say like, oh, the good old days of media, right, where like you had the advertisers and people told the story that needed to be told.
Right.
Like, it really was like you were always sort of, a newspaper was always beholden to the, the car dealership, the local car dealership. Like, they've always been sponsored in some way and
right,
beholden to them. But what do you say to people that say this is destroying publishing? This is like the end of it.
I mean, we don't do a lot of work with publishers. Gary just bought PureWow about a year and a half ago, and it's been interesting working specifically.
That's a digital media company,
yep,
basically.
Yeah, totally. And it's been interesting working with them. So they have their own production kind of team that lives within the PureWow world that creates a lot of their content. But when we opened up the facility here, they actually moved the production team over here with us. So up on the second floor, we have the whole PureWow production team that's putting out the content you see that gets put out there every day. They're like right upstairs.
And they collaborate. You guys collaborate, or you guys try to keep it separate?
We keep it separate, but we collaborate on like helping with resources. Like, hey, they need a light, cool. They need a camera, great. We kind of help them facilitate.
But you don't drive the type of content that they're producing?
No, we have help them, whenever they come up to a crossroads where they get like a big budget for like a campaign that they want to work on. We have like helped get them directors that have worked with us in the past to kind of direct some of these bigger campaigns and projects that have been coming to the forefront. But I think it's only kind of recently that they've had those opportunities. I think it's specifically because they've been involved with Gary, and Gary's been pushing the creation of bigger, longer form content on that platform.
Just because he likes it, or because that's the?
I think it's because he sees that there's the opportunity to create original content and to push the boundaries. I think really kind of lies in the hands of the publishers, because I think they have a built-in audience. And if you want to do a specific show that is targeted specifically for the millennial teen mom, you want to put it on PureWow because that's where the audience is. So if you get a brand that aligns with that ideology and philosophy, and you go, hey, listen, we've got this great show, they're going to use your Olay product in the show, and we've got 20 million people that are basically fans of PureWow that we're going to have a distribution platform, just kind of like targeting those people specifically. I think it's a win-win for a lot of people. I think that's where publishers need to start thinking about how to grow their brands.
So not just publishers need to are starting to produce branded content. Brands are becoming publishers, and also agencies are becoming are becoming
it's
multiple.
A very, very, very weird time that we're living in right now. Like 4 years ago, I've been like, oh, I can tell you exactly like what it's going to be like when I walked into this situation, and
you have places like BuzzFeed who now are setting up a 6-prong revenue strategy, almost transforming into something where you're kind of moving from the agency side, transforming also into another prong of publishing and other services, and they're moving into services as well, offering services to brands, similar. So, it's like everything. Everyone's just trying to figure out how you can create a profitable.
And I think, I really do believe in it. We've seen this with a lot of our brands too, where like traditionally you had like your AOR, right? You had your agency that was the agency of record for your brand, and they were in charge of coming up with your big Super Bowl commercial and your big, all the digital assets. The whole year campaign was basically in their hands. And then you had like a digital AOR like Vayner, who would be working in tandem with that agency and saying, okay, cool, you've got this great campaign that you're starting on Super Bowl, and then we're going to create digital assets from that, and we're going to manage this for the whole calendar year. And it's changed drastically. Like, there is no big year-long campaigns anymore, or very few. They still do exist in pockets, but it's very few. And there's no more, if there is an AOR or an agency of record, you've got these other agencies that are being allowed at the table, and best idea wins. I mean, I've seen it a bunch of times where you've got this big, huge agency, Wieden & Kennedy, sitting at the same table as a smaller agency like VaynerMedia and like even like an experiential agency at the same table, and the CMO is like, okay, so let's hear all the ideas, and the experiential agency, who's never even done a video before in their life, wins.
Huh.
You know, and they get the $2 million TV commercial, and Wyden and Kennedy doesn't get anything.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's happening. And that's the thing that's really kind of crazy, is that it's going to get to the point. I mean, you see it with influencers as well. Influencers are coming up, and they're one-man bands. Like, you know, Gary and D-Rock are out there doing something, and now Gary's like doing K-Swiss stuff. Like, that's kind of an agency thing. Do you think K-Swiss had an AOR that maybe like they didn't succeed, but Gary as an influencer can actually sell their brand better? So it's like, okay, agency, we don't need you anymore, or we're going to keep you on retainer, but you're not going to get this incremental work that we need to sell these sneakers. We're going to go to an influencer like Gary, or
he's basically your distribution.
Yeah,
or
and he comes up with the creative, or his creative is tied into his brand, and we don't really need too much, and it's really, really interesting. I mean, Pepsi is bringing a lot of their resources in-house. They do a lot of their own production in-house now, and that's, I think you can see it as being maybe good and bad. Good because, like, who knows their brand better than them, right? If they got an idea and they get some really good creative people to execute and kind of do that, why don't they just do that internally? But bad because you get a Kylie Jenner ad, you know, because everybody's inside thinking, oh my God, it's so great, and there's no checks and balances. There's no outside person coming and be like, actually, you may want to think about that first, you know? And so I think we're in a really weird time because things are being figured out, you know, in real time. And, you know, because of the access and because every single day you have to be putting out content to maintain relevancy with social media, it's like you're getting real-time feedback. And agents and brands, you know, 3 years ago, really slow to that change. It was like, okay, we'll put out, you know, 2 or 3 videos on digital a year, and we'll do a big Super Bowl commercial. Now, you look at Budweiser, they're putting out content every single day, and they're using a bunch of different agencies to get their voice out there. And they're testing things and they're trying things, and you know that was not the case 4 years ago. Yeah. And so in that trial and error, you're also like coming up with all these learnings, and these learnings are changing the philosophy at the highest level of these brands. And the brands that really get it and really understand that you have to be that nimble are the ones that are going to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like the interesting thing too is like Gary is like known for being, you know, swearing all the time and like, you know, putting himself out there. Yeah. And it's like he's like living his truth, and people are like following him. So it's like almost instead of having an outside sales team, he can just, you know, people will come to him if they want him. And it kind of would work better that way, you know, if what you're best at, and that's kind of like my thesis is like, you know, the future is independent production. Yep. You know, you have independent filmmakers, independent production companies, like a lot of you guys out there. Yeah. And if you have a way, if you can use tools like Story Hunter and the internet and business advice from Gary Vee, and who he's giving out for free because he can grow his, you know, that's part of his business model. And so there's ways for you to stay independent and build what you really believe in, and then you just need to find your clients, whether it's the bigger agency, the VaynerMedia's, anything of the world that want to work with you. It's sort of like this, since you can connect, the world's more connected, you can now kind of live out who you really are as like a producer.
Totally. And I think one of the key things, and I think this is where we'll see what happens, time will tell the next couple of years with influencers specifically, it's that brands, you know, who go out and find these people that have like the voice of their brand down, or their voice of like what they want to like have their brand to kind of adopt basically through the voice of the influencer. You know, you are also taking a bet that that influencer is going to maintain their reputation and maintain, you know, who they are long term. Yeah. You know, and that becomes the challenge because we've seen it time and again where like a brand gets involved with an influencer, the short-term relationship is great, they're saying everything right, and then all of a sudden something happens 6 months in, a year in, even if the person is no longer associated with the brand, and that influencer now has a blemish on their record that also gets back to their time with the brand, it becomes like a problem. Yeah. And so, you know, if you are that person who has the appetite to kind of grow, like Gary has, the brand in a specific voice and a specific tone, and stay true to it, I do think that there's a huge opportunity, to your point, to become like an independent production company team to kind of produce this content. The challenge will always be access to the brand itself. You know, how do you get there? I mean, Gary has built it in a way where he has basically just put himself out there so much that you can't not, you know, approach him and find out like, what is this guy all about? when you get access to that brand, you have to make sure that you go in there with all of your ducks in a row like Gary has and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is where I think your brand could grow, and really kind of stick to it. Because you still have a lot of bigger brands out there that are very kind of like still figuring out this whole digital social age. And if you've got a specific POV and a specific vision of how you think you can bring value to that brand, you have to stay true to it. You can't waver from it. It's got to be like, this is it. And you have to be the bigger person to walk away too. Because sometimes brands will try to like, you know, manipulate or modify what you're trying to accomplish with them. And if you firmly believe it, like sometimes you just have to like, you know, cut your losses and run.
Yeah, you can't offer it to all clients.
Yeah, sure.
You know, it's even with Story Hunter, it's like you can't, not all clients are like willing to take this jump, you know.
Yeah.
Some people like you guys see it and you're like, let's move, this is more efficient, this is a better way of doing it, but you know, a lot of people aren't ready or don't have things set up to make that jump. That's actually a pretty good segue into another question from Instagram, from a small production company called Miramax. No, just kidding. From Miramar.
I was going to say Instagram sent us a question, like the actual platform
Eddie,
itself.
Eddie from Miramar, Florida. That's where I got Miramax. He's asking, is the daily vlog, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but it has to do with producing video, is the daily vlog format that like, is that a viable strategy for all companies? And like even like a small production company, do you think that is like something that's valuable, or it's like, you know, would that help him attract clients? Like there's a lot of people, independent filmmakers, watching this that are like, how do I attract clients, even clients like you?
Yeah.
How would they, you know, they have their profile, they have reviews, they have other things, but how do they get people to know what they're doing?
Right. I mean, it's very challenging. You know, I think, you know, 15 years ago, whatever, when Gary started the Wine Library and did his thing, I think it was easier to kind of get people to watch because there was not an oversaturated market, you know, and every single day, you know, there are talented people that are making great content, but, you know, you see it today and tomorrow it's some other great piece of content that's being released, like, oh my gosh, have you guys seen this? Like, you know, so I think it's very challenging to kind of get yourself recognized and noticed, but I do think that if you kind of like really take a cue from what Gary has done, and I know it's impractical, and I've thought a lot about this myself for the Vayner production arm of what we're trying to do, and for other things that I'm trying to do even beyond Vayner. But like, how can you in some way find, you know, that thing that allows you to have the ability to be, you know, relevant, to be different, and to also have a cohesive vision, a cohesive voice. So one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about here is how do we kind of like lift the veil of what a production company is, you know, like, do we start rolling cameras 24/7 and like show what it's really like to be working, you know, in this space, kind of like taking a little bit from the Gary Vee model. So maybe that's something we're thinking about doing in the near future. But we've also been started doing like a podcast that we haven't released yet, and like we're also starting to think about like what's the voice application of this. So I think like if you are somebody out there that has a specific vision of what you think differentiates yourself from anybody else in the market space, I think you got to grab onto that and go.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we're thinking a lot about. The one thing that I've never wanted for the production arm of this thing to become is like every other production company. I think like we do things in such an incredibly different, unique way that it's something that I think a lot of production companies want to keep, you know, veiled from the public, because when you really get down to what it takes to get things done and how you kind of really make great content, it doesn't take a lot nowadays. Like, you can make great content, and I mean, Gary does it every single day, right? I mean, millions of people are watching his stuff every single day, and it just goes to show that sometimes the voice is more important than how the execution of that voice. Yeah. And I think, and by voice, I mean like what you're saying and how you're marketing yourself. And so I think if you are somebody with a vision, and you are somebody that has, you know, a specific point of view on production or how you want to like actually make content, you have to stay true to that, and you have to like really maximize it. So for a vlog or anything else, like I think there's value in everything. I think there's value in a lot of content.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be vlog
Doesn't
style.
have to be. I've even started like, you know, putting together like some essays that I want to write just on like criticizing like film and stuff like that. Just make stuff and put it out there. I know it's kind of cliche because Gary says it all the time, you know, just make content. But I think oversaturating the market with your vision and your point of view is the thing that's going to get you heard and recognized the most.
No, it's interesting. Like the story format, I was never on social media. Now I'm like on this. It's like I'm like filming a story and I'm not editing and I'm doing my day-to-day job. It's like I'm not just sitting there. I'm not a filmmaker now. You know, I'm running a company, but it's like you can do it at any moment.
Yeah.
If you don't care about making it perfect.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, I'm never in front of the camera. Like I very rarely do a lot of stuff in front of the camera, and I don't have a big social presence.
How's he doing?
I'm not bad,
Facebook,
right?
how's he doing? Oh, we got a high five.
Okay, cool. I don't have a big social presence, you know, but as I'm starting to do different things with brands, and as I'm starting to like grow the brand of the production arm, the brand of the company, like I'm seriously thinking about how I start to become a little bit more active, a little bit more exposed, a little bit more, you know, in front of the camera and stuff like that. And it's been something I've been thinking about for the past like 6 months, and I'm still like reluctant to kind of like just do it and do like an everyday thing and kind of like really make people aware of like the production side of all of the stuff that's happening, because I think that's a little bit of a white space. I know Casey Ness does an amazing job of that. But he's a very niche kind of character that does it his way, and I think there's something to be said about what this world is like that a lot of people don't have like access to, that I'm kind of a gatekeeper to. So I've been thinking a lot like, if I were to do it, how do I do it? And I get all heady about it. You know, I start to think about, okay, so if I put this video out tomorrow,
just do
what's
it.
Gonna be
Start. People don't
exactly.
start.
No, exactly. That's exactly it. And so like I think if you are not that person who is very precious about, you know, making it perfect, and you know, before I came on here, I was in the bathroom like, is my hair right? Is everything good? Like
me too.
You know, I think like you just have to go for it, and and that's what I think is so amazing about Gary. I mean, he's got no reservations about posting a picture of him on an airplane after having just woken up, and he doesn't look great, and it doesn't matter.
No filter?
No filter, no nothing. It's just right there.
Yeah.
And because I believe in his case, and I think this is you know, the case for a lot of people who have got a lot of people that are following them, is like they are just so secure with their voice and so much believe in what they're saying as being the right thing that they don't care. Take it for what it is.
Simplifies
it
life.
Totally simplifies it. And think about like great films or great TV shows. Like how simple are some of the best things in life creatively when you really kind of think about stuff that you want to watch. It really kind of boils it down to that simplicity. And I think that's something
that truth.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's like learning the guitar. Bob Marley is like the easiest. This is totally off topic, but
really, I didn't know that.
It's like it's like for playing the guitar, it's the easiest thing to sing. It's pretty easy to sing.
Yeah.
But like it's like one of the best the type of music out there, because it's just so powerful and true and real.
Totally.
So how do you take that kind of concept of and bring that to your clients? Like how do you show them how to leverage their influence, if you know, influencer, and like how do you deal with taking that, giving them that model?
So I'll use an example of a client that we're working with right now. It's a football academy in Africa. They came to us about a year ago.
Soccer.
Yeah, I am a huge American football fan, but I'm starting to just say, no, this is really football. Soccer is really football.
That's the real.
It is.
It makes more sense.
It makes total sense.
To be football.
Yeah, you know. I mean, it is what it is.
This is a global audience.
Yeah, totally. So they came to us because Gary had been in Ghana. He was there for a Pencil of Promise thing. Which I think he's on the board of directors for that non-for-profit organization. He was there. They saw he was posting in Ghana, like, hey, we've been following you. We think you're great. Like, could we work together? Their whole thing came over to me, and basically they were like, hey, listen, do you guys, from a production standpoint, want to get involved? Because I think they need some video work to kind of like tell people like what it is they are doing and who they're working with. So I looked at their website. I kind of got a little bit involved with them, and it's a really amazing organization. They do incredible work for these kids in Ghana, and I met the CEO. He came here, and he started to tell me stories about some of these kids and where they come from and some of the hardships they've faced at a young age before coming into the academy.
Yeah.
And then I went on their website, and right in front of them, and I said, where is that on your website? Like, where are these stories that you're telling me? I see these kids who are graduating like Harvard. Like, they have kids that have gone to like some pretty incredible schools here in the States, not Harvard, but like Michigan, and stuff like that. And they've graduated college, and they've got pictures of their graduation. They've got pictures of this incredibly beautiful pitch that they've built in Africa, all grass and stuff like that. And then you kind of like do a little bit of research on these kids who play barefoot, over like the most ridiculously like terrible pitches in the entire world, like in dirt with glass and rock, and these kids are killing themselves to get into academies like this one. But that story is not on your website, it's not on your page.
Yep.
So I started to like work with them to try to like reposition their voice, as opposed from the voice coming from the top down. Let's bring the voice from the kids and bring it from the bottom up. And I think that's where we do our best work, is we try to help brands to really identify their voice, because a lot of times brands think they understand their voice because they're so focused on their own voice being a part of the brand, as opposed to really taking a step back and saying, oh, the voice of my brand shouldn't be coming from me, it should be coming from this person or that person. We've done it with Budweiser, right? Like, we got involved with Budweiser, and immediately we saw a white space with their sports, and not using sports figures and athletes to actually like help be the voice of their brand. So we did the Budweiser Cubs video for them. We did a video with Derek Jeter. We just did one with Dale Earnhardt Jr. And like, that was the voice, because their fans and the people that drink Budweiser are watching these athletes and watching. I mean, Dale Earnhardt Jr. used to drive a Budweiser car, and they've lost touch with that. So it was our job to kind of come in and say, listen, you got to like reposition your brand voice, and really this is what your voice is. It's not this other thing that you've created where you're trying to attack people who drink microbrews and beers. It's really, your voice is really back to where the people who are engaging with your product every single day. You need to embrace those people. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that, when you really kind of think about how we work best with brands and how we're trying to educate brands, it's really about trying to make sure that you're finding the authenticity in the voice. And I think it's something that very few brands are really attuned to what the voice of their brand is, because they don't really understand who the consumer is. And I think really unpacking that and really understanding like the power in understanding where that voice needs to come from can transform your brand. So we've been to Ghana a few times. We've done some videos for this organization, and we've basically gone back and we've done a few videos that have not launched yet. They're going to be coming out soon. That really tells the stories of these kids, and we've spent some time in some pretty difficult conditions, shooting with these kids and shooting with their families, and really kind of showing the challenges that these kids have to go through from where they are to getting into this academy and then going on to play professional football all over the world.
Yeah, it seems made for film.
Yeah, totally.
But this is kind of like a bottom-up sort of approach, as opposed to doing market research and deciding what the market, and then having kind of a top-down advertising strategy, it sounds like. Yeah. But so this example is like perfect, because there's change, there's all the elements of story that you would want. There's, before, after, there's the camera loves Africa. There's there's gorgeous. A lot of stuff. But what if you're just a brand? What does this really work for all brands, or not really? Or are there certain types of industries or types of brands where it's most powerful?
I mean, if you're a brand that wants to engage with consumers, I feel like it applies to every single brand. Like
consumer brands.
Yeah.
And also B2B?
Absolutely. Okay. We've been working with this other client recently. Again, very confused. They're starting a brand new thing, a huge marketing endeavor, huge, massive. Very confused. should we be on Facebook? Should we be on Instagram? Should we partner with a publisher? Should we do this? Should we do that? Should we do this? And they were really kind of like wanting some advice about like where they need to actually like launch this thing. Like in 2019, they're launching this massive, huge endeavor in 2019, multi-billion-dollar thing that they've invested in, and they want to market it properly.
Million.
Billion. No,
Oh,
billion.
wow.
It's massive.
With a B.
Yeah, with a B. And so when we've had a few meetings with them, and I was just like, listen, like you're so concerned about the place you're going to put this content and how you're going to really kind of where it's going to live. Like you need to really just invest in yourself. You need to invest in who you are as a brand, and don't really care about the distribution, because if you do it right and you do it in a way that you create incredible content that is really focused on what it is you're trying to say about who you are, and this really interesting, unique opportunity that you're going to be opening up for a lot of people all over the world, like that's what needs to matter. Don't focus on the distribution. The distribution is going to be part of the whole thing, but if you build your brand in a way and you build it kind of like maybe what Tom Brady and Strahan have done, like in 5 years from now, you might actually be selling media instead of having to look places to buy it, because like you're pushing everything back to your bigger brand, and you're pushing everything from a content creation standpoint back to who you are. In 5 years from now, you're going to stop paying to be on Facebook. You're just going to be naturally there organically with all this earned media. And you may have a website where you're selling banner ads to Nike or to whomever, because you've created such incredible content that is solely focused on your brand. And I think it's changed their perception of what they want to do. We have a follow-up meeting with them in a few weeks, and I think they've really kind of thought long and hard about like, oh, we weren't thinking that way. We were thinking like, who's the partner that we need to kind of like get involved with, and what's the right distribution platform, as opposed to what is your brand and how can you create a brand in a way that kind of builds it organically. So distribution is not something that is the thing you think of first, but it's the thing that you think of based on what the content that you're creating is.
Yeah, and so you build that kind of publishing arm, sort of, where you're producing and you're telling your story, and then you can use paid ads or whatever type of distribution is available to you.
Yeah. Look at Red Bull. Look what Red Bull did, over the past 10 years. I mean, it's an energy drink. Remember, it's in a can energy drink. Like they've got their own media company, that does not just creates content for their website, which also people advertise on their site.
They do not?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like you've got all of this paid media that you can tap into, and they've created events, with athletes, and so they've become like an incredible media agency all in of themselves, and so. I think that is an incredible opportunity that like brands really need to like look at and be like, wow, that's a different model than what we're heading down now, which is all this other. What
type of advertisers advertise on?
I don't know. I haven't checked it out, but yeah.
Huh.
But it's interesting when you think about their model. It's an older model too. It's been around forever.
How long do you think it takes for you to build something, invest in it, and then create something where you have an audience where people actually are coming to you and you can monetize it?
That's the biggest challenge with working with brands, because brands don't want to play in that space for 5 years to kind of get where they need to go.
Yeah.
And you've got to have a brand that really plays the long game and understands that this is not going to happen overnight, that it's going to be a 3 to 5 year plan, for us to get to where we want to go. But I think, again, it's what I mentioned earlier, like, as much as people that are in this world to try to like become producers, directors and stuff, you've got to play the long game. Like brands got to play the long game as well. And sometimes they don't want to.
Because it's changing every second.
Yep.
So there's this is kind of, we have Corey Chong in Toronto on Facebook asks, this is like kind of a Gary V ask.
Okay.
But what advice have you gotten about video that you should ignore?
That you should ignore?
Yeah. Or I mean, what types of things do people say that
everything has to be fucking vertical? I can't stand that shit. Like you got to follow some, best practices thing where everything's got to be one by one, and that's the extent of my swearing too, because it really frustrates me, and I understand why platforms have best practices and why they feel they have to sell a model of how to produce content for their platforms. I mean, they know their platforms better than we do and understand what the algorithm is that's going to get people to watch content the best on it. But I was actually a little disappointed when Instagram television launched and it was like everything's got to be one by one, and there's no 16:9 option. So I think like if you've got some incredible content and you've got an amazing, you've got some stuff that looks beautiful in anamorphic or 16:9 or whatever, like just stay with that. Like these best practices have been established to really help, the marketing teams at these platforms sell, what they're offering to, the brands that are advertising on them. And, they want to have a way in which that kind of convinces everybody that this is the right thing to do. But it's only the right thing to do because it's what brands need to hear. So they can say, yes, here's $1 million for this campaign we're running on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. They're not necessarily the best thing to do when you're creating content. And if you're creating something that is important, meaningful, and you have passion for, like just do it in the format that you think is best to tell your story.
Yeah. And so what do you think is like the elements that you have to stick to in terms of just video storytelling?
I do think people have a very short attention span, so you got to grab them real quick, real fast. I think you got to find ways that you can be visually interesting and stimulating, because everything looks beautiful nowadays. Everybody has a drone shot that is on something that they've done that looks amazing and gorgeous and beautiful. But I also think you have to find a way to be a very creative storyteller, meaning you can't rely on specific tropes that have been done, in the past that you can just ape and try to like morph into your own style. You got to be very true to like who it is, what your voice is, and just not really waver from that. A lot of people try to like take what they do and try to make it something that is not who they are, because they feel it's like gonna, it'll get people to watch or whatever. But I really think that people who are kind of like sticking to what it is that they do will be the ones that kind of like really, make it in the end and kind of like really have a voice that's not corrupted by, what they think needs to happen.
Yeah. Famous last words. Do you have any last words or?
No, I mean, like I really do think that we're in a very, very, weird time for video creation. We're seeing so many people put out content on the regular, and I think that, as the world kind of evolves and tries to figure out like what is the next thing, I think like the people that are malleable and can change and can morph. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of bigger production companies like going under and not successful in this digital world. And you're seeing production companies like announce like, oh, we're going to create a digital arm of our company, because they don't have the wherewithal to kind of be that flexible, malleable thing. Everybody's very precious about like, they're very rigid and precious about what they want to accomplish. And I think if you really want to like succeed on a big scale and do some really creative work, if you are not changing and you're not malleable, I think that you're not going to actually be able to continue to thrive, because every single day it's changing.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of what we're kind of trying to do here with at Story Hunter, with production companies, independent filmmakers all over the world.
Yep.
And then it's kind of up to you guys to figure out how you unlock the creativity of the people on the ground that are kind of building the production houses of the future, and how you create that network.
Yep.
And thanks for hosting us here.
My pleasure.
Thanks to everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. All right.
Thanks, Alex.